In this video, we will be shaping sounds using EQ8, channel EQ, and EQ3. Understanding how to effectively use these EQ or equalization tools is essential for crafting the perfect sound and balancing your mix. First, let's start with channel EQ. It's perfect for quick tone adjustments and features 3 bands with a smooth musical response. Let's see if we can use channel EQ to have the Beat That bass track, or our bass track, sit better within the mix. So I'm going to add channel EQ by clicking on Audio Effects, then channel EQ. I double click, and now I have it loaded on to the track. So let's look at some of the parameters. So you can think of channel EQ very much like a car stereo. So if you wanted to boost the bass frequencies a little bit, or get a little bit more of the high end, making it a brighter sound, then we can boost the higher frequencies. But with channel EQ, we can use each of these frequency bands in order to control the timbre or the color of the sound. Now, with the bass, it's very common that you might have a little bit of muddiness within the sound. And that muddiness can be controlled if we cut the sub bass around 40 hertz, and that can prevent a low frequency rumble. And sometimes by boosting a little bit, around 70 hertz or so, that can give it a little bit more power and warmth. Let's see if we cut the sub bass, how that controls the sound within the mix. So with this control, I can select this as a way of rolling off those lower frequencies in a more steep way. And then I can also attenuate by adjusting the low frequency band here. So why don't we A/B this? We'll play back the track with channel EQ applied and then without to compare what it's like to cut that sub bass frequency range. And here's without. So as you can see, it does give a little bit more clarity, and this actually might help control the bass a little bit in relation to our clav, which also has its own bass line. Watch what happens if we solo these two tracks. So it's a little boomy in the bass there, so if we turn on the channel EQ, this might balance a little bit better between our basic whirly track and the Beat That bass track. Now we might have cut away too much. This is definitely possible within this process. So maybe we can create a little bit of a better balance without totally choking the bass. So this is a delicate process. Sometimes it can take a few passes in order to get the exact sound that you'd like. Now with channel EQ, it can be a bit basic in the sense that we only have 3 bands. And if we control the mid frequency here, sure, we might be able to give a little bit of a boost around maybe 1 to 4 kilohertz. That can help a bass cut through the mix. But sometimes this can be a little bit limiting, and we might want to have a bit more control. And that's where a tool like EQ8 can be useful. So with EQ8, we have a series of filters that are present. And here we can see we have shelf filters, right? We have a notch, right? We have a band pass filter. So we have high pass, low pass, right? So we have a lot of different filter types. Now, for the sake of this video, we won't be talking about each of these filter types in depth, but this does give you a greater sense of control. So if I lower this value here, you can see that we've applied the shelf. So we can apply this shelf, and just as we said before, now we can really control exactly where we want to cut that sub bass frequency. And if we want to give a little bit of a boost around the 60 to 80 hertz range to give it a bit more power, we can see that's where the fundamental is here on the spectrum. We can move over just a little bit, give that a bit of a boost. And we can also potentially cut a little bit on the mid range to add for more separation. And then we could add a little bit of a boost. Remember that I was saying about the 1 to 4 kilohertz range can help give a little bit more character to the bass and have it cut through the mix. And this is kind of a process that we might need to adjust. And sometimes we may even control the gain on the out, right? So here we can take the equalized sound and prevent any type of distortion from some of these boosts and cuts that we are doing in certain frequency bands. And we can apply that to the output from the equalizer. So you can see that spike there might be a potential issue. In that case, we might even, consider cutting a little bit more in this range. And lastly, we have EQ3. With EQ3, we have even a more simple model where we have the low, the mids, and the high. We control it with gain. And then we have a pair of filters here. So we have a dual filter with a low frequency crossover and a high frequency crossover, which allows us to further extend a little bit of the control that we have. With these three tools, you should be able to create either a more quick edit like we did with channel EQ, or a little bit more of a precise edit with EQ8. So this is how we can use equalization to improve the balance between tracks within our composition, and also to improve the quality of a sound on a singular track.